So let's dive in first to the controlled burn. And so, have you ever done a controlled burn or prescribed burn?
So one time I was probably 12, 14. I was a lot younger, but I did one time.
Okay, so my understanding, which I would never do this, but my understanding as a private landowner, you can pretty much burn any time, or maybe not any time, but you can pretty much burn without any kind of certification. You just go out, you just do it. However, we have Jad on the team who's a certified burn manager. He's got all his certificates from the state and knows how to do it right. And so we got him involved and trying to coordinate his time off work and with the calendar. We come down to the end, and the county of this specific property being Jefferson County, Birmingham, big city, is under the not only the Forestry Commission's umbrella, but also the Alabama Department of Health or Jefferson County Department of Health's umbrella. So you have to get two approvals, which makes it a little bit more difficult. And just because of I guess smog and different airborne air quality and there's all these levels of things you have to be concerned about in a more populated area, but there are also some things we weren't really aware of that were gonna happen that were really, it was in the moment, it was like, "Dude, this is ridiculous." But, looking back, it's gonna be something we laugh about for years to come with the people in the area that have obviously in their entire lives never seen, a prescribed fire of any kind, and, so we'll get into that, but we got Jad on our team. It's basically a perfect, it ended up being like 75 acres of was what we burned. It's like a perfect little, I think 90 acres total rectangle. And it's been burned probably about 10, 15 years ago. And I would say probably 15 for sure, because I've been around. I think it was probably when I was in the military, is when it got burned, because growing up it was always thick and nasty, and then it was kind of better when I came back from the military, and then over the years since the new property owner has owned it, and then we've got onto it, it's just been really thick, nasty, but you can see the burn marks on the trees. So we knew that it had been burned before, so it already had some plans in place that you can work with the Forestry Commission and different departments and biologists and have them come in. And so we planned this prescribed burn last year, and then we found out Jefferson County that you can't burn past April 1st. And
Mm.
so we missed the burn window last year, and then this year we almost missed it. We burned on March 31st. And so we filed all our paperwork. They came out, they did a site visit the morning of. We were trying to do it the previous Friday, but it was very low humidity, very high winds, had not rained in a long time. They put a no burn notice out because they were so worried about wildfires. They actually, over the weekend, were pretty much up all weekend through the night, multiple places across different counties around the Birmingham area, putting out
I
wildfires.
walked up on one of them Friday going to roost turkeys at a friend's,
That's
and it
wild.
was just burning the woods down. Yeah.
That's wild. So, did you call and report it? I guess, or
I didn't, but the guy I was with, he did. He
okay,
let some
cool.
people
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, so they were very busy. So even though the burn, the no burn was in effect, um, not everybody sees those a lot of times, or sometimes things just spark and they happen. I mean, I remember a dumpster fire starting over some grass clippings that we put in it one time. It was pretty wild.
Mm.
So very dry. We didn't get to do it Friday. Monday was high humidity. You could feel the moisture in the air, which means it's gonna be a slower burn. It took a lot longer than we expected. An hour burn turned into a 3 or 4 hour burn. But we get in, she comes out, the lady comes out from the health department, she approves it. We notify the Forestry Commission, all the fire departments should have been notified. We were told that they were getting notified. And so we're right in the area of three different fire departments. So they kind of all can respond. And so these three different fire departments are all very small fire departments, which means they have a lot of volunteers. And so volunteers are usually really excited to get off work to go respond to a fire. And so we have those fire departments close, but everything's approved. On Friday, we actually went out there. We got a tractor. We scraped down the road so they would be dirt, but they're only about the width of a bulldozer, a small bulldozer blade. And you really want about three widths, or maybe 30 feet wide is what Jad said. You really want a very large fire break. So what you do when you are trying to expand your fire break is you do what's called back burning, and so you have the wind to your face. You basically you light into the wind, and it's going to creep just really slowly down where from the the fire break into the part that you're going to burn. And what that does is it expands that fire break. So when the fire coming from the other direction meets it, it stops. So instead of having a 10-foot to 12-foot wide fire break, we now have a 40 yard fire break because of the way it's burned. And
So
the wind,
it's not blowing and jumping though.
yeah, that way
Okay.
it's not jumping over the fire break and lighting a lot of land on fire that we don't want to light. However, because it hadn't been burned in a while, it had a ton of fuel, which created a lot of smoke, which put a lot in the air and let a lot of people know that we were burning. And from far away, you could see it. From close by, it's on a pretty busy road. Obviously, all those people can see it. So we start to back burn, and it's already building up a pretty decent amount of smoke, but it's all blowing away from the road, which was the whole reason we planned it for that day. We needed that southwest southeast wind to push it away from the road and from the railroad tracks. I mean, not that it really impacts the railroad. The train can it stays on the tracks. It doesn't have to steer. But we just really wanted it to blow away from those two things, just as a courtesy to everyone, especially the road. That might have gotten too thick to see. So we've back burned it, and now we're going around, and we're lighting that west and that south side, and so it starts to just rage like an inferno. It has so much fuel, and I personally have never been around anything other than a campfire, and it just kind of hit me in that moment. I've never really been around a fire, but the level of heat, like over 1,000 degrees of heat, hitting you, and as it worked up this hillside right against the road, I mean, and then it's just roaring and making all kinds of crazy noises, and things are popping, and trees are starting to fall, and it's really intense. I didn't know that it got that intense, honestly. And I was down across the road and went down into like this valley to try to get away from it because it was just so hot on my face and my skin that was exposed. I only had my hands and my face really exposed, and it was so hot that I was like, man, I'm gonna get like a sunburn or something from this. I don't know if that's possible, but it was just thousand. I mean, it was over 1,000 degrees, and as it pushed up this hill, man, people start driving down the road, and they're like, "Hey, has somebody called the fire department?" I like, "Oh no, this is a controlled burn. Like it's planned, like in coordination with the forestry commission and the health department." Oh, okay. But as the fire is happening, we have to continually circle to make sure it's not jumping any fire breaks, or there's not a deadfall that's lighting up, or a tree that's not a deadfall yet, but it turns into one. It lights up and then it falls over and goes across the fire break. So we're just constantly circling it, making sure everything's good. And then we hear sirens, and I'm like, what? Like, surely they're not coming here. But there's not really much else to respond to in that area. It just so happens there's a really busy road that connects a lot of cities to a lot of other cities, and so there's so much traffic coming through there that we're not able to tell people. Next time we'll put out signs like, "Please don't call." Like, please.
It's prescribed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is prescribed. And so the fire department got so many calls, and the way that I guess the people were calling, their cell phone triangulation was happening. They were just hitting one dispatch number for one fire department, and so that fire department responds, and it's a rescue vehicle, so it's like an ambulance. And then it's all these volunteer guys in their pickup trucks with their lights on, and they're pumped.
Ready
They
to
get to
go.
throw on their volunteer, lights on their normal pickup truck, and their sirens, and they're you can hear them just coming down these back roads, like, they get to break the speed limit, and they're like, "Yeah, we get to do something today." And I don't know if there's pay tied to that. They respond to it. They get paid, but they get off work on a Friday or on a Monday, and so they're excited.
Mm.
And then they get there, and we're like, "Yeah, it's a it's prescribed burn, like controlled burn. Well, we knew it was on today, but we've just gotten so many calls. We just figured it had gotten out of hand or something. And we're like, no, like it's
Yeah.
good, you know? And they're like, oh, okay. So then they all kind of just start to leave and go away. And then 10 minutes later, we hear sirens again. And I'm like, what is this? And so I guess it changed dispatch areas. And so then another fire department is coming in from another direction. And
Oh,
so we hear him coming, and this guy, I mean, he's got this decked out like 2500 HD. And it's got all these hidden lights on it and sirens, and he comes flying up in there and he's like, "Hey, you know what's going on? Like, we got a ton of calls for this. We know it's a prescribed burn, but you know, y'all need some help." Like, he was he's pumped up. He's excited, and I'm like, talk to Jad because I'm tired of talking to everybody, and like I don't know what to say. So Jad's like, "Yeah, man, I'm a retired firefighter, and I'm a burn manager and certified, and yeah, we're good here." And they're like, "Well, the smoke plumes or flumes or whatever it's called, like whatever, all the smoke going up in the air, they are, it's so high that after that guy leaves and his couple of guys from his department come flying in and they all kind of talk and then they leave. Next thing you know, we have a airplane, like this little Cessna, circling us to watch the fire.
oh
And we're
god.
like, what in the world is going on? And we're like, okay, we have two fire departments that have responded. A third one, no lie, a third one responds. So then we have another fire department, a whole nother group of guys excited. I don't know how they got dispatched, but they're like coming in their work clothes and like they're fired, they're like half in fire gear, half in I'm like, what have we done? What have we done? Like, are we gonna get in trouble because of all these resources, that are being dispatched
You're
to us?
sending the bill, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like that, like we've done nothing wrong. And, so they come, same story, we're on our 3rd fire department, tell them the same thing. They're like, "Oh, okay," like, "Are you sure?" Like, it's like kinda like maybe they wanted to hang out, but there wasn't really anything for them to do, I was like, I mean, you can sit here and watch it with us, I don't know, we're just getting the side by side, we're just making circles over and over, we're turning left like NASCAR. And, so then they leave. Well, then, the neighbor, her name just so happens to be Karen. Karen goes on Facebook and she says, I said, I'm surprised I haven't heard or got a message or anything because she doesn't have my phone number, a Facebook message from Karen. And Jad thought I was joking calling her Karen. And I'm like, no, like that's her name. And, so then, so I see Karen, she doesn't message me, but she makes a post. I have personally, directly contacted the Forestry Commission and have officially confirmed that this is a controlled fire and not to be worried. And, to all the residents that see the smoke or see the fire, it's under control and everything's good. So I see that. Well, she just called the Forestry Commission. Next thing I know, the Forestry Commission wildfire response team comes rolling in there and they're like waving at us. And we're like, what's going on? They're like, hey, we got so many people have called us that we just came to check it out just to make sure it was good. We flew the plane over, so it was them flying. The Forestry Commission was the one in the plane. They even they dispatch or have a plane flying up around it to make sure it's staying within our 75 acres. We've told them, and they're like, yeah, everything looked good from the air, and but we just wanted to come and make sure because there's so many calls. And I'm like, this is wild. And so everything calms down. We're getting about to that last hour, and all basically the back burn areas are meeting the normal burn areas, and the main pass, and they kind of are coming together in centers. And it's like, okay, like we don't have any trees burning; they're going to fall over. Like we pushed a couple over towards our property so they wouldn't fall across the fire breaks, and you're feeling pretty good about this. And then I'm like, okay, Jad, like I'm gonna roll out. I gotta go knock out some stuff for work. And as long as you're good. He's like, yeah, yeah, I got it. I got it. So I start out of the property and like these are our own roads. Like, we smoothed out and I drive a little crazy. It's our property. Nobody's supposed to be out there. So I'm like taking my little Ford Maverick and I'm just flying down through all these logging roads. All of a sudden I come around a corner and it's like, like there's this dude in a Honda Pilot all blacked out window tint. So I'm like, what is this guy doing? I can't see in his car. So I pull up next to him and
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, where's my pistol? Got it. Okay, good. Like I don't know who this is. And he like rolls down the window, like just enough to kind of barely see out of it. And he's like, I was like, hey man, what you doing? Like, you're like halfway up in our property. Like, what's going on? Oh, I was just seeing, I was just coming to see what this fire was about and just check it out. And I'm like, okay, well, you're on private property, so I'm gonna have to ask you to turn around because you're trespassing, and we don't need anybody in here. And I was like, what's going? He's like, oh, okay, okay. I thought it'd be fine just to come up and take a look. I'm like, no, it's not fine to just come up and take a look. Like, it's just the audacity of people, it's just wild. And then you have like all these little old ladies that have went down and turned around and they're coming back. And, there was a different old lady in a little minivan or a little SUV asking us, hey, is everything okay? Is everything good with this? I mean, we turned the community upside down.
Yeah, it
Like
was a big day for the city
yeah, they
almost.
had something to talk about. Like, they were pumped. Like, they're like, "There's something happening here." Nothing ever happens here, and
Mhm.
uh, clearly they've never, seen a prescribed fire control burn, and I will say, like, all the fields, all the really good quality timber, like, all the places that I remember being, like, really flourishing wildlife habitat areas, are now grown up pine thickets, briars, nasty most everything that I can think of when I was growing up that I remember seeing is that was a field or that was some kind of, decent woods are now just pine thickets and nastiness. And
Mhm.
so for the last 30 years, I mean, you're talking like I was 5, 10 years old at the last time I saw a lot of these places like that. So for 30 years, nobody has seen a prescribed burn. Nobody knows the benefits of it. Nobody understands, like, even on 75 acres that you can make a difference. Everybody's got to, thinks you got to have these large, massive tracts of land, and you just don't. I mean, do what God's given you, steward well with the little and you'll be given much.
Mhm.
It's kind of that thought. And so, for those of you that are listening or you're watching and you don't know the benefits of prescribed burn, so one, it's going to create better nesting habitat, better brooding habitat. So, like as the poults of the turkeys, they get a little older, they have the ability to evade predators a little bit better. It's going to increase the insects. And so you're going to have insects that they can feed off of. It's going to pull things out of the ground and it's going to allow things to develop new from a forage standpoint for deer. So you're going to have a lot of when green up happens here in a couple weeks, you're going to start to see all this new growth. And then we're also able to go in and we're able to clear it out, open it, and we're able to plant new. Everywhere that there's now the forest floor is now cleared, gets a little sunlight or maybe gets a little bit of sunlight or a lot of sunlight, we can now go in and we can start to plant and hopefully choke out a lot of the weeds, a lot of the junk with good native grasses, native plants, native habitat, that is made to flourish in that type of environment to improve not just for the turkeys, but for the deer, for really all types of wildlife. And so there's a lot of benefits from a wildfire standpoint. So, what you're doing when you do a prescribed burn is you're actually eliminating the fuel for a wildfire to take place. So I've had funny thing is my mom and dad didn't know that I was the one behind the fire. And so they've smelled the smoke and they've, been like, my mom's a big, like, I'm getting sick about everything kind of person.
Mhm.
And so they have they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that was," my mom at first was like, "Oh, I didn't know that was you that was doing all the fire and called us all the smoke and everybody's talking about it." And then she goes by yesterday morning. So we're now 4 days removed from the actual fire. She goes by and she said, "Hey, I just went by and I saw something was still burning. Like, are you sure it's okay?" I'm like, well, like once it hits these fire breaks, the railroad track, the road, the actual fire breaks, there's no more fuel for it to burn. And so it's just going to sit there and burn in place within the zone, but it's not actually going to catch anything outside of that on fire. And so you're removing that wildfire source of fuel. So if it does burn in the future, it's less fuel for it to burn. So, like in California, where you see all these massive wildfires, it's because they just have tons of fuel that they can just keep going and going and going and going because there's no more prescribed fires that are happening.
Mm.
And then later in the day, my mom texts me again, "Hey, your dad went by, saw the property on fire, and he saw something on fire, and he's really concerned about it. You know, are you sure you don't need to call the fire department to put something out?" And she said, "No, Taylor told me it was good." And he's like, "Well, why would Taylor tell you something about a fire being good over there?" Like, why would he be checking that out? He's, because I'm not in the fire and rescue arena, never have been. And it's like, oh well, he's the one that put, helped put on the prescribed fire over there. And my dad's like, our son, like Taylor, like our son Taylor, and she's like, yeah, like he's like, "Whoa, why would he set the woods on fire like that?" So there's just this big gap of education on why these things are beneficial for all kinds of different things. So we hope to put more pollinator plants in for bees, for butterflies, for all the things that you've seen a decline in due to pesticide use, due to lack of habitat, due to all these different things that we used to do that we don't do anymore.
Mm.
And so it was really fun. Lots of experience gained, but not sure I will ever partake in that again until that specific property is due for it. In a more urban environment. This is like right on the edge of like city and country. And got a lot of response there. Or we're just going to create signs and put them out everywhere for better PR next time.
It is a cool sight to see all the colors and everything just turning black. It's like a wall going through the woods.
Yeah, and the smoke turns this like really crazy, like grayish, like orange and yellow color up in the air when it really, really gets to burning good. That was really cool to see.
Yeah, I bet. Y'all find some sheds after the burn? Or?
That's a good point. I need to go walk it. No, I was
Mhm.
kind of letting it calm down. I didn't want the soles of my shoes to be burned, because it was still pretty hot. Just I checked it a couple days ago. And so a couple days after it, it was still pretty hot. And so I was just gonna let it cool off a little bit more, and
Yeah.
it rained out there this morning, which is why, I got soaked. I was working on a house, wrapping a house, and I got soaked this morning, so maybe the rain will cool it off a little bit and go look for sheds. I haven't even thought about that. That'll be exciting. Yeah.
Whenever I see some burns, I always go take a little walk through just 'cause it'd be a lot easier to see them.